Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! It's Monday, and on Mondays we do tier lists, and on Wednesdays we wear pink.
Muscle Beach, half an hour. I will see you there, or I will see you on another time.
That was very confusing. I don't know if you're gonna come or not.
No, I'll be there. I'll be there.
All right, I'll see you. I'll see you then. Bud.
All right. Leches on the menge.
So, a few quick things up top. This tier list is based on how worried I am seeing this Pokemon on the enemy team. Also, I am still on a green screen from the broadcast UCS. Thank you to everyone for all the kind words from that. I had a great time doing it, and I just am too lazy to take this down. So right now, this is my green screen box that I'm in, and that's how I'm going to be bringing you this week's tier list. Let's take a look at our tiers this week. We have the So This Is My Nightmare tier.
Ow! Oh, I'm sorry.
You okay, man?
I'm sorry.
This is my nightmare.
These are Pokemon that I hate seeing on the enemy team, and I know we're going to have a rough match. We have our A tier, the Alice, I'm worried tier. This is when I'm talking to my Aunt Alice, and I'm letting her know that I'm worried about the Pokemon I'm seeing on this tier. I really have an Aunt Alice. This is the B tier, which we still have the B tier, so those are, you know, Pokemon that I'm kind of in the middle about. We have our C tier, that this is going to be a pretty chill match tier. I'm not too worried about it. And then we have our D tier, our Decidueye Memorial tier, a tier named after Decidueye when it came to the game and was quite bad. And now, interestingly enough, I'm actually going to start with the Decidueye Memorial tier because let's face it, if you see a Decidueye on the enemy team, you're gonna have a great time. Decidueye is one of the most easy Pokemon in the entire game to punish. I am never worried when I see a Decidueye on the enemy team. I am always so happy when I see one because they are, for any player that can just get to them, they are complete dead weight for their team. Oftentimes, there are some amazing Decidueye players. In coordinated play, you can see some great stuff with Decidueye. However, in general, if you see one on the enemy team, it's good eating, especially if you're a carry. Get ready, because you're just going to rip this thing apart all freaking match. Okay, where do we want to start first? You know what? Let's start with Venusaur. I'll just go through a lot of this list here. Venusaur, I would say, I'm a little worried when I see Venusaur. The big thing I'm worried about is, of course, Petal Dance, Giga Drain. If I see Venusaur with Solar Beam, oh, get ready. It's probably even worse than Decidueye in a lot of ways. Not because it can't do some things and output decent damage, but because it's so easy to punish it. When I see Pokemon on the enemy team, a lot of the time I'm thinking, how hard is this going to be for me to deal with when I'm trying to fight? And how easy is this going to be for me to KO or stop it from doing whatever it wants to do? If it's Petal Dance, Giga Drain, and they're playing decently well, yeah, Venusaur's a little worrisome, and its Unite move is actually really good. I think a decent Venusaur could do pretty well inside of a lot of these games. Okay, let's see who's next. Okay, we'll just go to Gengar. Gengar is very middle of the road for me. I would say most Gengars I see are not that great. However, there are some Gengars that just get a level advantage and start steamrolling the whole team. So when I see one on the enemy team, I'm not freaking out about it, but I've got to be honest, I'm also not completely chill with it. I'm a little B tier about it, you know? I'm like, ooh, what's happening with you, Gengar? They can be very, very good. Mr. Mime, Nightmare. Nightmare Pokemon to see on the enemy team. They're great. They're tanky. You can't KO them very easily. If they know what they're doing, they're a menace. If they don't know what they're doing, they're still really, really difficult. I think Mime is a nightmare Pokemon to see on the enemy team. You could maybe bump it down to the I'm worried category after some recent nerfs to it, but no, nightmare. Snorlax. Snorlax is pure B tier for me. If they are going Flail, life is great, because they're not going to do anything throughout this match. I hate to break it to all the Flail users out there, but I'm so happy when I see one on the enemy team. I'm like, oh, thank you. They don't have a defender. Now, if you see a good heavy slam block Snorlax, it's actually pretty difficult to deal with. So this one can kind of, it feels like it plays a little bit of that range with Gengar right there. By the way, when you're listening to me talk through this tier list, you're also seeing how these Pokemon make you feel when they are on your team. Like a Gengar and a Snorlax, it really is a coin flip depending on how good that Pokemon is going to be. Gardevoir, I'd say I'm not very worried with the Gardevoir. Really easy to punish. They can do a lot of damage, but you can get to them fairly simply. They don't have a lot of HP. So that's another one of those Pokemon that feels like for most Pokemon, if I'm playing a carry, like if I'm playing Greninja or Delphox or Talonflame or Dodrio, something like that, I'm very happy to see a Pokemon like this on the enemy team. A little more worried if I'm a tank and I'm dealing with it, but in general, I'm not very stressed about Gardevoir. Absol, I'm not very worried about either, to be honest. I think there are some really good Absol players, but in general, I don't see Absols that are that impactful inside matches. Some are pretty good. And you'll notice right away if an Absol is actually going to be trouble throughout a match. But in general, I just feel like they're not that difficult to kind of counter. They're not the toughest Pokemon to deal with at all. Not too worried when I see an Absol, honestly. Garchomp's either B or C. There aren't a ton of great Garchomp players, I don't think. And it's really obvious what he's going to do. But he's stronger than he's ever been. I think I'm going to leave it B, just because if they're aware enough to get their experience, they're actually kind of tough at certain points throughout the match. In general, though, I'm not super stressed about it. In fact, everything in this B tier I'm not crazy stressed about, but they have that X factor. They have something about them that just lets you go, ooh, I'm a little worried if I see it. All right. Lucario, little worried, just because I don't see a ton of Lucario players these days, and Lucario is a very high skill ceiling Pokemon. If they're good with Lucario, they're going to be very good. In fact, I don't often see Lucarios do nothing. I at least see them fight well inside path, and then after that, they're decent at using their moves. If they're Power Up Punch, you still got to watch out for them the whole time. If they're a really good Extreme Speed, you're in a lot of trouble. I'm a little worried when I see a Lucario. Crustle? No one plays Crustle well. I don't know what it is about Crustle, but that Pokemon is just set up to not be played well, apparently. Every time I see a Crustle, I think, well, this is going to be an easy Pokemon to punish. However, I will admit that a few will kind of knock your socks off, because Crustle is not as bad as people play it. Greninja, I'm not super worried about Greninja, I have to be honest. I think most Greninja players are playing this Pokemon because they like it and not because they're good with it. Every once in a while, you'll have one pop off. There are a few Greninja players, especially when you get to higher ranks, you kind of see them more and more that are really good. In general, though, I'm not super stressed about Greninja. I have to be honest. It's just not I don't worry too much about it. Talon? Please don't pick Talon. Look, I love Talonflame. I'm so sorry, Talonflame players. And you know me, okay? If you've been following me for a while, I love Talonflame. I played it in a tournament that I ended up winning with Talonflame. So I love this Pokemon. No one does anything with this Pokemon, I swear to you. Charizard is pretty middle of the road. You know what? It's weird. Char's kind of bad. I'm actually putting it here in my A tier because its Unite move is that good. Its Unite move is that good that I'm still a little worried seeing Char, I have to be honest. I think it's a really underwhelming Pokemon in many ways right now, but I do think its Unite move is pretty legit, and you just have to be worried about it. Zeraora. Zeraora is either D tier or in some ways A tier. I'm going to put it B. Here's the thing. No one plays Zeraora. They don't. If they do play Zeraora, every once in a while, they are so cracked it's unbelievable. There are still a few Zeraora players out there that are just really, really good with this Pokemon. In general, I think this is an absolute throw almost when I see Zeraora on a team. They never do anything except that one little time where, for whatever reason, they're just dominating. Cinderace. I'm a little worried about Cinderace. Cinderace is the kind of Pokemon that they're so easy to play and so easy to get value from that I'm a little bit worried. I'm more worried about Cinder than Greninja. And the reason being is you have to be really, really good with Greninja. You don't have to be as good with Cinderace to just be more of a threat inside of a match, it feels like. Also, it just feels like they more often will rip at Rayquaza, and any Pokemon that rips at Rayquaza, even if the enemy team is behind, they still like kind of throw the game into a 50-50 flip. kind of stressful. So I'm a little worried seeing a Cinderace. Eldegoss. Eldegoss is a bit of a nightmare Pokemon. It's close. It's like either nightmare or I'm worried. I guess it's not as bad as some of the supports, but Eldies are really good. They're really good. They're really good in Path. They're an easy Pokemon to be good with, and they heal. They get shields. I think Eldi is really, really good right now. And seeing one on the enemy team, I go, it's going to be tough to deal with. Cram, not very worried about Cramorant. It's a super high skill ceiling Pokemon, and most players are just kind of walking around with it. I swear most people don't do anything with this Pokemon. It's not like... It's not Talonflame levels of throwing or anything like that oftentimes, but Crams, I'm not super stressed when I see Crams. Blastoise, I have to be honest, Blastoise is a Pokemon I'm almost never worried about, and not because Blastoise is bad. Blastoise is very, very good in my opinion. The big problem with Blastoise is, for whatever reason, and this happens with a lot of 3-stage Evo Pokemon, they just sit at their 2nd stage Evo for a majority of the game. Blastoise is notorious for this. I think it has the most trouble because it's a tank, so it's not really set up for securing objectives as securing wild Pokemon as easy. I actually find that I do great with this Pokemon, but for whatever reason, the enemies with Blastoise will just be Wartortle for a huge majority of the game. It's a trope, but it's true. Tropes versus Blastoise in video games. Pikachu, not very worried about Pikachu, to be honest. It's not Decidueye level bad, but it's just really, really squishy. The nice thing about this Pokemon, though, is if it has Volt Tackle, it actually kind of bumps it up to A in some ways. Most Pikachus, I don't think, play particularly well, but if they're using their Unite move a ton and Volt Tackling the carries, they're kind of scary. Clefable, truly a nightmare. Please, why does every enemy team have a Clefable and my teams have not a single support? It's just horrible. It heals their team so well. Its gravity stops my carries from doing what they want to do. Total nightmare Pokemon to deal with. Clefable is like nightmare for me. Okay, Alolan Ninetales. I'm not too worried about A9. I'm gonna put it. I'm not too worried about A9. I was going to put it B just because it's lane phase. It's, when it's in path, essentially, as Pokemon Unite calls it. It's so frustrating to deal with. But after that, it's really easy to just kind of dominate this Pokemon. So I'm not too worried about Alolan Ninetales. Wigglytuff, I'm a little more worried about. A little more, I might put it B. It's tough. You know what? Here's why I'm putting it B instead of A. Because every single Wigglytuff throws its Unite move on itself only at 2 minutes 40 seconds. So until that changes, actually, I'm not super stressed about it. But it's a good tank. Slowbro, nightmare. Nightmare Pokemon, so incredibly good. You can't KO it. It's great at every stage of the game. It's going to use its Unite move on you every single time. It's so frustrating to deal with. Slowbro is a nightmare. Machamp. Machamp kind of bumps it out of the B tier for me and heads up to the A tier. I'm a little worried about Machamp, and the big reason is its Unite move. Machamp's Unite move is a game-changing play, and a lot of the time, I would say it's very, very telegraphed, but there are enough decent Machamp players, and there are just situations that you find yourself in where you think, dang it, I see it coming and I really can't get away from it. Because of that, I'm a little worried against Machamp. Blissey, nightmare. Nightmare. It's just gonna keep one of their most difficult Pokemon alive all game. Its Unite move is brutal. I mean, Blissey is just total nightmare to deal with. Another nightmare, Mamoswine. Let's face it, Mamo is so frustrating to fight. It's freezing you the whole time. It's stunning you. It's pushing you around. It's good all throughout the entire match. It's protecting the enemy team pretty well. It's not that hard to be good with Mamoswine. Any Pokemon to be amazing with it, to get to the top of the green screen tier with it, any Pokemon to get this high, you still need to be amazing with it, even if it's kind of an easy Pokemon to pick up. Like, a lot of the Pokemon in the Nightmare tier are actually pretty easy to pick up. Maybe Mime's the hardest one there. But even though it's easy to pick up, to master it, it's still really, really tough. But someone playing Mamoswine at a moderately decent level is so hard to deal with. Such a scary Pokemon. Sylveon, I'm not too worried about Sylveon, to be honest. It's not D tier. I said that wrong, but I'm not super worried when I see Sylveon. They're really tanky, but I find that they don't really impact the match that much near the end. However, for a while, they're pretty good Pokemon. Competitively, they're seeing a lot of play too. Greedent. Greedent's almost S. I'm going to put it A. Here's the thing about Greedent. No one plays Greedent unless they're good with Greedent. And a good Greedent is tough. It's tougher than someone who's like a good Zeraora because they're just so much tankier and that they know they can punish you in ways that other Pokemon can't. They can move around the map in such a way that you don't really exactly know where they're going to be, but you know that at any moment they can be kind of ruining your time. So I think Greedent is a Pokemon I'm worried to see. Dragonite, I'm going to put also in the A tier. Here's the thing about Dragonite. I'm worried to see Dragonite, but if it's Outrage Dragonite, it's the best day of my life. So I'm not that worried about Dragonite. I'm worried if it's Hyper Beam because it just means that objectives are going to get kind of flippy, and that's a tough thing to deal with. Outrage, until the new buffs come in, which might be really awesome for the Outrage build, but until the new buffs come in, not super worried about Outrage Dragonite. However, Hyper Beam, stressful. Zarina, I have to be honest with you, lately, I'm not worried at all really about Zarina. I think Zarina's in a rough spot, so not super stressed when I see Zarina, I have to be clear, but there are amazing Zarina players. I don't know. I don't think Zarina is in that scary of a spot right now because you can finally KO it. You used to not be able to KO it, which was pretty tough for this Pokemon. But right now, when I see Zarina, I'm fine with it. Trevenant's middle of the road for me. Trevenant's a pretty good defender. I don't think people play it that well. So given that, I'm not too stressed about Trev. It's kind of in there with Wiggly, where I feel like they're pretty good, but they don't freak me out. Aegislash. I'm worried about Aegislash. People don't play Aegislash unless they kind of know what they're doing. And Aegislash is really tough to deal with if a player just understands when to be in shield mode, when to use their wide guard, when to use their boosteds to heal themselves, and then when to turn it around and use their boosteds to just start to rip up the entire team. So I actually am a little worried about Aegislash for sure. Hoopa, I'm worried. This almost bumps into Nightmare just because of the recent buffs for me, but I think the other one stressed me out a lot more than Hoopa. Hoopa's just incredibly good right now, and it's so much easier to use. Its Unite move can be really devastating, and its early game is also really, really good. So I'm worried when I see a Hoopa. Duraludon, Nightmare. It's not even the best Pokemon in the game, although it's totally slept on. I really do think so. It's not the best Pokemon in the game. However, Duraludon is a flip machine. You'll just walk into Ray. If you get to Ray 1 second late, it's already at a quarter health. It's already gone. There's a big ring of fire around it. They're just trying to rip it away. So I just know the match is going to head down to this really unfortunate rip fight at Rayquaza, and I don't love that. So it's a little stressful seeing Duraludon, more than a little. Azu is fine. It's fine. Not amazing, but not bad either. Good early, too. So I think Azumarill kind of hangs out in that B tier where I'm like, all right, I'm a little worried about this. Espeon kind of feels like this, too. With the new Espeon buffs coming, by the way, I think this is going to change completely. I actually think Espeon's very, very good. I'm just not that stressed when I see it on the enemy team. You can punish it decently well, and until it can outrange basically every Pokemon in the game with its Psyshock, I think it's fine. It's fine. Delphox. I'm a bit worried with Delphox. Delphox is easy to use. And it can just skate around the map and do tons of damage. Its Unite move is up all the time. I'm worried about it. It's not Nightmare Fuel. You could still punish it pretty hard. But at the same time, I don't think it's that hard to be good with Delphox. So when I see one on the enemy team, I'm like, yeah, I know what they're going to do. And even if they're mediocre at it, they're going to kind of output insane damage. Glaceon. I'd say I'm worried about Glaceon. It's easy to use. It does a lot of damage. It, whether you're using Icicle Spear or you're using Icy Wind, it can just pop you with a lot more damage than you expect or want to deal with at the time. So I am a little worried seeing a Glaceon. The damage output's pretty high. Buzzwole. Buzzwole's been getting really good lately, and I've seen a lot of really good Buzzwole players, but in general, this is not a Pokemon I worry about when I see it on the enemy team. I actually I'm fine with it. If Buzzwole's there, all right. Yeah, we know what it's going to do. Its level 5 is amazing. Early on, it's going to be brutal, but I'm not super stressed about it as the match goes on, usually. Tyranitar, Nightmare. Nightmare because if someone just gets enough experience with it, no matter what, you have to deal with it. It's like You could have a level 15 Buzzwole on the enemy team, and it just doesn't end up doing that much in the final fight. That's almost never the case of a level 15 Tyranitar. They're at least going to run at you with a giant shield and stomp and try to pick up some KOs. Like, it's just a tough Pokemon to deal with. However, if I had this tier list split up between the last few minutes and like the first 5 minutes, this would be Decidueye Memorial tier. The first 5 minutes of the game, I love going against Tyranitar. You punish it the whole time. You're in its central area. Wherever it is, just keep fighting it. It can't fight you. Then it hits level 9 and your life is a nightmare. Mew, nightmare. So good. You can't KO it. It's too slippery. It gets away from everything. Its damage is absurd. It's crazy. Mew's crazy. Mew's gross. It's the grossest Pokemon. It's so friggin' gross. Scyther is... Honestly, I have to say it's kind of B for me. I'm not that worried about it, even though I recognize that it... First off, I guess it's a little bugged. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it's the kind of Pokemon that can wipe the entire team, but it's also extremely easy, I feel like, to KO if you just catch it a little bit. So if your team has no, defenders or supporters, you're kind of dead no matter what. But if you've got even a little bit of a defender support situation going on, all you have to do is stun Scyther one time and it's kind of done. I recognize this Pokemon can wipe your entire team, but I'm just not that stressed by it. I'm really not. Dodrio, I'm also not stressed by. Dodrio is an extremely high skill cap Pokemon, and most people don't play this Pokemon that well. It's pretty dang good, by the way. If a player knows what they're doing with Dodrio, it can be really, really hard to deal with. I just don't often find that I run into very good Dodrios. I think it's a really hard Pokemon to excel with. Scizor, on the other hand, I'm actually more worried about Scizor than I am Scyther, even though I think Scyther is technically better than Scizor. Scizor is just so tanky, and they live through everything. And a good one is just kind of jumping around and keeps regenerating its health, and you'll see your allies sort of like walk in one by one, KO'd. Your allies keep walking one by one, KO'd. Your allies keep walking one by one, and Scizor KOs all of them, and they all keep walking in to this Pokemon that regenerates all of its health. Bum, bum, bum. Can you tell that I have a 4-year-old daughter, and the only songs that I can think of now are songs like that? Here we are. All right. I think it just lives through so much. It lives through so much. Sableye, what else am I supposed to say? I'm not even saying it's that good. I just hate it. I hate going against it. Oh, it's gonna ruin my time. It's gonna ruin my life. It's nightmare. It's nightmare. Zoroark, nah, no, not worried. Not worried at all. Probably C. It's maybe it's even D. I'm just not worried. When I see this Pokemon, I think, yeah, fine. Who cares? Like, you're not doing that much a lot of the time, and you fall off super hard late. The top players on this Pokemon are really good, but in general, I'm not stressed about Zoroark at all. Urshifu. I would say I am more stressed. So, well, they're both really tough. I'm more stressed right now when I see this is the Rapid Strikes and here is the Single Strike. I'm more stressed when I see Rapid Strikes because Rapid Strike is sort of a, I guess it's like a noob stomping build. Look, it can stomp you even if you're good, but if you don't know what you're doing and you're just fighting Rapid Strike's build while it's a little over leveled, it'll just keep KOing you even on your own goal, and there's really not much you can do about it. I actually think it's one of the best Pokemon for stomping players who don't know what's going on. Like, truly, Rapid Strike Urshifu, if an enemy doesn't know what's up, you're just constantly in their face KOing them. It feels like what Serena used to kind of be like, you know? And then Single Strike, I'm worried just because it can secure just about anything. I'm honestly, it kind of goes close to Nightmare. The thing that makes Rapid Strike more of a nightmare for me is I know that my weaker allies are just going to get KO'd by it repeatedly, over and over and over and over again. And then if they feed it too much and it has a multi-level lead, it'll do it to any member of the team. So I'm a little more worried seeing Rapid Strike just because I know what's going to happen inside the match. Dragapult, I'm not very worried about. It's fine. I mean, yeah, it's fine. I'm not stressed. It's easy. It's really easy to counter. That's the thing about Dragapult, especially Dragon Dance. I really love the build, but you know, you can't be more telegraphed than showing the entire team the circle you're going to travel. It's like, where is it going to be? Is it going to be in this circle that it's showing all of us? So it can carry pretty hard, but most of the time I just feel like it's easy to punish. And then Comfy, not stressed at all. At all. Here's the thing: if Comfy is winning a match, they would have been winning with any support Pokemon in that position. Comfy, I feel like the cool thing about this Pokemon is it is it's like whatever your team is doing, you're doing it more. Are you losing? You're losing more. Are you winning? You're actually winning more with this Pokemon on your team. It just accelerates what's happening inside the match. I think in general, every single support in the game, I'd probably rather have on my team. So I'm really not that worried when I see this Pokemon, to be fair. And then finally, just for fun, we have Goodra and Lapras. I'm just going to put them up in the This Is My Nightmare. The reason this is my nightmare is because if Goodra and Lapras are in the game, that means we're on the public test server. And the public test server is a horrendous place. And you don't want to be there. So that's why that is a nightmare to see right there. And that's what I think about the Pokemon that I see on the enemy team. What I'm thinking is going to be, you know, kind of a frustrating match and what's going to be a very, very easy match oftentimes. Of course, all this can change depending on player skill. But yeah, this is about right. And now let's have a little fun. It's fun to do this, it's fun to do that, it's fun to do all these things, it's fun to move things around. Yeah, the big thing that I really worry about is if they have a Crustle on their team and they go critical hit Crustle, it can just one-shot so many Pokemon that even if the player isn't a high skill level, it's kind of, it's just one of those nightmare moments. Of course, as I mentioned before, Lapras will be coming soon. Lapras is not any good at all, and it's going to hurt your team more than help it. Goodra, on the other hand, all the way at the top is going to be the best Pokemon for sure. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I figured this would be a fun one. I know we're going to have some balance changes and new items and stuff coming soon. I'll have a more regular tier list around that time. If there are any other tier lists you want to see, let me know in the comments. Thank you. Bye, everybody.